US President Harry Truman signed his name onto the vessel's keel at a ceremony in 1952, and the submarine was constructed at the Electric Boats Shipyard in Connecticut. Much of the research for the craft's atomic power plant was carried out at the National Reactor Test Center in Idaho. A full-size duplicate of the Nautilus engine was constructed and tested. On the 30th of September 1954, First Lady Mamie Eisenhower christened the hull of the newly commissioned Nautilus.
Doctor, this simplified diagram of the USS Nautilus, the world's first atomic power.
The Seawolf was the second nuclear submarine commissioned by the US Navy. It was the first and only submarine built with a liquid metal nuclear reactor. The liquid sodium plant was more efficient than a water-cooled reactor, but potentially more dangerous for the ship and crew. Testing of the power plant took place at KAPL, the Knowles Atomic Power Laboratory, operated by General Electric. Hundreds of nuclear scientists developed a full-sized nuclear reactor to observe the chain reaction of nuclear fission that would be used to power the giant submarine. Both the Nautilus and the Seawolf were huge steps forward for the nuclear industry. Unlike nuclear-powered aircraft, nuclear-powered subs became a viable proposition, and the technology is still used today. A documentary produced by the California Academy of Sciences in 1956 enlisted renowned submariner Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz to explain the principles of submarine operations.
Well, the submarine has two systems also. On the surface, she uses her diesel engines, which can generate about 6,500 horsepower and propel her at a speed of about 20 knots. For surface propulsion, she has enormous storage batteries all along the keel here, which produce power for driving her submerged.
Well, in other words, then, if you didn't have one of these snorkels and you wanted to go below the water, then you'd have to use the batteries for that sort of work.
That's correct.
The Admiral also demonstrated how periscopes operate.
Right into the camera. You have a cutaway model there. Perhaps you could demonstrate how this periscope operates.
Well, this cutaway model will show sufficiently well the principles of the periscope. In a submarine, the periscope is a 40-foot steel tube. The commanding officer looks into this prism here, and the line of sight goes up and strikes this prism here, and so on out to the floor to the surface of the ocean. This prism may also be tilted so that he can search the sky for planes.
Well, suppose we go now back to the training facility at Mare Island and see how the periscope would actually work. And here we see Lieutenant Commander D.T. Morris going through a periscope drill, and the command, of course, is up periscope.
The skipper's first duty, as soon as the periscope comes above water, is to make a full 360-degree sweep of the horizon, to scan the earth off of the surface of the sea in all directions. He then focuses on his target. The next command we will hear is range mark, and following that, bearing mark. At these commands, the assistant approach officer, in this case Lieutenant Ware, takes note of the range to the target and her bearing on the azimuth circle. A good sonar operator can tell the difference between the propeller sounds of a carrier and those of a destroyer.
And of course, we should mention that the sonar system also is able to send out supersonic waves, and those go out and hit an object and bounce back to the submarine.
And by the interval of time elapsed from the time they leave the ship until they come back, we can calculate the range.
Just how far away that object might be. Well, suppose we listen to some of the things we might hear from a submarine if, for example, we were listening to a commercial ship, such as a freighter, the sort of a beat that we would hear from the propellers. Then followed by the beat of a faster ship, such as a destroyer.
In 1956, year of Cold War, America produces an answer for the future. The atom-powered submarine Nautilus passed all tests with flying colors, cruising submerged a distance equivalent to circling the globe. America's sea frontiers were pushed back in a mighty leap. With increased range, guided missiles were added to the underseas arsenal, and the submarine became a more formidable weapon of counterattack on enemy coasts. The year had indeed seen a revolutionary step forward in naval warfare and the nation's defense.
White House ceremonies break the news to the world of the epic feat of the atomic submarine Nautilus. President Eisenhower personally awards the Legion of Merit to her commander, W.R. Anderson, who skippered the 1,830-mile voyage.
In 1958, with great fanfare, the Nautilus completed a record-breaking voyage from Pearl Harbor, under the Arctic Circle and through to the Atlantic. Operation Sunshine was the first crossing of the North Pole by a ship.
6,000-mile shortcut from the Pacific to Europe. With the mighty Nautilus submerged for the 96-hour cruise, the voyage was a quiet one for the 116 crewmen and scientific observers. No emergencies, no encounters with fanciful sea monsters a la Jules Verne. But always there was a sense of adventure, as the Nautilus logged a cruise that will rank with man's first strides into space in the annals of 20th century achievement.
Commander William Anderson skippered the sub on its voyage that included 1,590 nautical miles submerged under ice. It was a dangerous expedition, as authorities were unsure whether the vessel's gyro compass would operate correctly under the ice. The submarine only carried enough breathing apparatus to save a third of the crew if there was a loss of oxygen. Fortunately, the sub's voyage was a success, and the Nautilus made many more in future years, shattering speed and distance records. In 1959, the USS Skipjack put to sea. Even more revolutionary than the Nautilus, the nuclear-powered attack sub featured a fish-type hull, giving it unprecedented speed and maneuverability. The vessel had similar controls to an aeroplane, and its diving planes had been moved from the hull to a 23-foot sail that resembled a shark's dorsal fin. A second-generation S5W reactor gave the Skipjack the ability to travel at full power from 90,000 to 100,000 miles. Its motto was Radix Nova Tridentis, or Root of the New Sea Power. The design was so effective that it was used in every US submarine until 1997.
The first sea trials of the nuclear submarine Skipjack, an even more revolutionary craft than was the Nautilus, thanks to its fish-type hull, which gives the Skipjack sensational undersea speed and maneuverability, far greater than any U-boat before. The pilot actually flies it like an airplane with similar controls. Only underwater is the Skipjack really at home. Her snake-round hull is completely unlike the boat shapes of prior craft. On the surface, she's a little sluggish and awkward, but the nuclear power plant means that the Skipjack and her sister subs now on the ways will be able to cruise and fight underwater to the limit of the crew's endurance. Defense Department films show the debut of the true submarine of the future.
The following year, the world's largest nuclear sub, the Triton, circumnavigated the world underwater, following the route taken by 16th century explorer Ferdinand Magellan. Operation Sandblast was a top-secret voyage of 84 days that took the monster sub across the globe under the command of Captain Edward L. Beach. The only unauthorized person to see the Triton on its record-breaking voyage was a young Filipino fisherman, Rafino Bering. He later said he thought he'd seen a sea monster. I was very frightened. I tried to get away as fast as I could. Triton surfaced off the coast of Delaware on May the 10th, 1960, to a rousing welcome, the skipper receiving a Legion of Merit from President Eisenhower. The voyage was intended to boost American prestige in the world and send a triumphant message to its enemies. 2 months later, a Polaris nuclear missile test from the USS George Washington served the same purpose. The test firings were the culmination of a program to combine the stealth and speed of a nuclear submarine with the power and